Good morning. In the last class, we were discussing the main goals of planning in India. Before we move ahead, let us discuss the service sector. As we have observed, the emergence of service sector as the highest contributor to GDP. As the country develops, it undergoes structural change. In case of India, the structural change is peculiar. It is peculiar because normally it happens that the primary sector is the main contributor to GDP, and later on in the process of development, it happens that the secondary sector becomes important. But in this case of India, after primary sector, suddenly the service sector emerged as the largest sector. Usually with development, the share of agriculture declines and share of industry becomes dominant. At higher levels of development, the service sector contributes more to GDP than the other two sectors. In India, the share of agriculture in GDP was more than 50%, as we would expect for a poor country. So before 1990s till the 1970s, it was the situation that the GDP contribution was more from agricultural sector, but by 1990, the share of service sector was 40.59%, more than that of agriculture or industry. Like what we find in developed nation, this phenomenon of growing shares of service sector was accelerated in the post 1990 period. So after 1991, these things increased, and today we will observe that more than 60% of the GDP is being contributed by services sector. This marked the onset of globalization in the country, which will be discussed in chapter 3. So in chapter 3, although we will discuss these things in detail, so for our knowledge and our understanding that service sector is the largest sector in India, and it has not allowed the industries to grow as the largest sector. So in India, industries or secondary sector never became the largest contributor to GDP, as it happens in case of many developed countries. So in many developed countries, it happened that after primary sector, secondary sector became more important. But in India, secondary sector never became the largest contributor. It is the services sector which dominated just after primary sector. So after discussing these goals of economic planning in India, the next topic we will discuss is agriculture. You have learned in chapter 1 that during colonial rule, there was neither growth nor equity in the agricultural sector. That means there was no equality in land holding or equality among people. The policymakers of independent India had to address these issues, which they did through land reforms and promoting the use of high yielding variety seeds, which ushered in a revolution in Indian agriculture. So in agriculture, we will discuss two main things. One is land reforms, another is green revolution. So first, let us see land reforms. At the time of independence, the land tenure system was characterized by intermediaries variously called jamindars, jagirdars, etc. So in old times, it was happening in India that the jamindars were the controllers of the land, and the poor farmers had to pay tax to the jamindar. It was called lagan at that time. So they had to pay lagan before independence, and that lagan or tax was then paid by the jamindars or jagirdars to the British government. So it became very difficult for the poor farmers to agriculture or cultivate, and then out of that cultivation they had to pay lagan. Sometimes they did not have the money to pay the tax also, and they incurred heavy losses in agriculture. Who merely collected rent from actual tillers of soil without contributing towards improvement on the farm. The low productivity of the agriculture sector forced India to import food from United States of America. So before Green Revolution, it was the case of Indian agriculture that we had to import, or India had to import food grains from America or Britain to fulfill the need of food grain in India because of its large population. Equity in agriculture called land for land reforms, which primarily refer to change in ownership of land holdings. So in agriculture, if equity or equality was to be implemented, land has to be redistributed among the people, because there were some landholders or zamindars who had plenty of land and they did nothing. They only collected tax from the farmers. And the actual tiller of the soil who worked hard, they had no land, or they had very little land holdings. So this difference in land holding was to be corrected. So land reforms was demanded at that time. Just a year after independence, steps were taken to abolish intermediaries and to make the tillers the owners of land. Tillers means farmers. The idea behind this move was that ownership of land would give incentive. That means if you own your own land, the crop will be your own, and you will earn profit on that crop that you own yourself. Otherwise, if you don't have your own land, you will just be a laborer, and whatever the amount being paid by the owner of the land, you have to take. So it was incentive to tillers to invest in making improvements, provided sufficient capital was made available to them. Land ceiling was another policy to promote equity in agricultural sector. This means fixing the maximum size of land. Land ceiling. Ceiling means upper limit. So for zamindars or landlords, the government decided to have a land ceiling that you cannot own beyond a certain limit. This means fixing maximum. So meaning of land ceiling you can underline in your book. Alright. This means fixing the maximum size of land which could be owned by an individual. The purpose of land ceiling was to reduce the concentration of land ownership in few hands. So land ownership, it is concentrated normally in hands of landlords who have plenty of land but nothing to do. The abolition of intermediaries meant that some 200 lakh tenants came into direct contact with government. Tenants, they are the farmers. They were thus free from being exploited by zamindars. The ownership conferred on tenants gave them the incentive to increase output, and this contributed to growth in agriculture. So plenty of land could go to the landowners or farmers themselves, and they would cultivate on their own land. So this would increase the output of the agricultural sector. So however, the goal of equity was not fully served by abolition of intermediaries. In some areas, former zamindars continued to own large areas of land by making use of some loopholes in the legislations. So although Land Ceiling Act was passed and the government said that you cannot own land beyond a certain limit. So suppose the land ceiling was 100 hectares, so you cannot own any land beyond 100 hectares. So suppose a large landlord has 150 hectares of land. So what he did, by transferring 50 hectares of land in the name of his family member, his wife or son, now he became the owner of only 100 hectares, that is the upper limit. So he was not giving any land to the government. The rule was that if you have any land beyond that ceiling, the extra land should be surrendered to the government, and that extra land will be provided to the farmers who don't have any land. This was the purpose or main focus of the government. But the landlords or big zamindars did not allow the government to do so. There were cases where tenants were evicted and the landowners claimed to be self-cultivators. So tenants were asked to leave the land, and the landowners, that means the zamindars, they said that I am the farmer of this land, claiming ownership of land. And even when tillers got the ownership of land, the poorest agricultural laborers such as sharecroppers and landless laborers did not benefit from land reforms. So these land reforms did not benefit much to the people of India or farmers of India, whatever was the purpose of the government. Land ceiling registration also faced hurdles. There were some problems. The big landlords challenged the legislation in the courts, delaying its implementation. So they were challenged, they were going to the courts to remove this act of land ceiling. and in this delay they transferred the land or extra land in the name of close relatives. So they use this delay to register the lands in the name of close relative, thereby escaping from legislation. The legislation also had a lot of loopholes which were exploited by big landholders to retain their land. Land reforms were successful in Kerala and West Bengal. Now, in India, only these two states, Kerala and West Bengal, has been successful to implement land reforms seriously. And one of the reasons behind it is that the government of these two states were owned by the political party, Communist Political Party or Communist Party of India, CPI or CPIM. So since Communist Party of India is committed towards the farmers, they forcibly implemented the land reforms. So in Bengal and Kerala, it was found that land reforms have been successfully implemented. In rest of the country, land reform was not successfully implemented. So these government committed to policy of land to the tiller. Unfortunately, other states did not have the same level of commitment, and vast inequality in land holding continues to this day. So today also we will find that in other states like Bihar or Uttar Pradesh, the jamindars are having plenty of land but they don't have any job. And on the other hand, poor farmers have very small holdings of land and they cannot cultivate or they cannot do agriculture profitably. So this is the drawback of land reforms in India, which was to be implemented but could not be implemented successfully. Now, ownership and incentive, let us discuss this point also. The policy of land to the tiller based on idea is based on the idea that cultivators will take more interest. They will have more incentive in increasing output if they are the owners of the land. This is because ownership of land enables the tiller to make profit from increased output. So if the farmer is owning the land, he will work hard so that he could earn more profit on agriculture. Tenants do not have the incentive to make improvement on land since it is the landowner who would benefit from higher output. So in many cases when Jamindar own the land and the farmers are just laborers on the land, they get only part of the output as their share and major part of the agricultural output is kept by the Jamindars who earn more profit on them. The importance of ownership in providing incentive is well illustrated by carelessness with which farmers in former Soviet Union used to pack fruit for sale. So since in Soviet Union or USSR, the land was taken by the government and the farmers were the workers on the land. So it was a complete failure in that country and it was observed that farmers were not working hard on their land because they knew that this land is not belonging to me. It was not uncommon to see farmers packing rotten fruits along with fresh fruits in same box. Now, every farmer knows that the rotten fruits will spoil the fresh fruits if they are packed together. This will be a loss to farmer since the fruits cannot be sold. So, why the Soviet farmer do something which would so obviously result in loss for them? The answer lies in incentive facing the farmers. Since farmers in former Soviet Union did not own any land, they neither enjoyed the profit nor suffered loss because they were just getting the wages for the labor that they were doing on their land. So since they knew that whether we work hard or not, we will get the wages. So they try to limit the profit or convert the profit into losses by doing these type of activities. In the absence of ownership, there were no incentive on the part of farmers to be efficient, which also explains the poor performance of agriculture sector in the Soviet Union despite availability of vast areas of highly fertile land. So Russia, we all know, is the largest country in the world. So Russia had vast areas of fertile land for agriculture, but it was not profitably doing agriculture because it took the land from the farmers after the Russian Revolution and implemented socialism strictly in that country, and thus farmers were not the owners of the land, they were just laborers on the land. So this is the reason behind that India did not follow this type of land policy, and they tried to provide land to the farmers, and land reforms was to be implemented. So with this topic, I conclude the class today. In the next class, we will discuss Green Revolution. Thank you.